welcome to this episode of Trojan Poetry. We're on episode 110, and we have some... John's surprised.
What? Say what? What are you talking about?
So we have a special double selection here today for this episode. In honor of Black History Month, we have chosen two poems. We just had our African-American read-in yesterday here at our school. It was great. Students performed original work. They read poems. They read from books. And it was really just a lot of energy, kind of galvanized me, and I went and found these two poems. So the first one is called Alternate Names for Black Boys by Danez Smith. And I hope I'm pronouncing that first name right, but we'll make sure we get it right. So here we go. 1. Smoke above the burning bush. 2. Archnemesis of summer night. 3. First son of soil. 4. Coal awaiting spark and wind. 5. Guilty until proven dead. 6. Oil-heavy starlight. 7. Monster until proven ghost. 8. Gone. 9. Phoenix who forgets to unash. 10. Going, going, gone. 11. Gods of shovels and black veils. 12. What once passed for kindling. 13. Fireworks at dawn. 14. Brilliant, shadow-hued coral. 15. I thought to leave this blank, but who am I to name us nothing? 16. Prayer who learned to bite and sprint. 17. A mother's joy and clutched breath. I'll jump in. So the first thing that stood out to me when I read this was, first of all, that John was reading from his phone because I forgot to bring an extra copy of the poem. So look how high-tech we've gotten here on Trojan Poetry. Yeah. It's right there. So, sorry, John. Was just the format. If you look at the poem, it is a list, literally. And I counted off, and it lists these ideas. And then I started reading each of the entries, and I was wondering, are these phrases that actual names, translate to? Are these African names that translate into this? Or is he describing a black boy's situation, a black boy's world, where it keeps coming back to these images of death? 5, guilty until proven dead. 7, monster until proven ghost. 8, gone, 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 gone. Black veils, right? And that idea that a black boy's ultimate, all of our ultimate end is death, but a black boy lives only to die, which I don't know. Along with the format and the interesting descriptions in each name, that hit me the most. What did you think, John?
Yeah, just what hits me is the sadness, right? Obviously, of the depressing nature, apparently, right, of these lives. And I was wondering if there was going to be something positive, right? So number 4, coal awaiting spark and wind. I don't know, right? Because we've been doing a Harlem Renaissance unit in my class, and we've talked about people literally being burned to death, right? In America, African Americans being burned to death. So that the idea of being burned there—that's what I'm imagining. And I didn't really see anything. Brilliant shadow-hued coral.
Yeah, see, I was gonna argue that I thought line 10 was maybe the turn. Going, going, gone. They become gods. And then what once passed for kindling, it's also hard to tell. Do these link with each other, or are these supposed to be separate? Because what once passed for kindling become fireworks at dawn. They're brilliant. Prayer, they learn to bite and sprint. A mother's joy and clutched breath. And that last line is so sad because you see the mom, watching their child grow up and clutched breath. It's almost as if they're waiting. They're waiting, or they know what these things are that could happen.
This is certainly a critical thinking poem. Obviously, you're starting to critically think about, are they connected, and are they translations of names or something? Yeah. But just the beauty, of some of raising it to poetry, whatever that means.
Beyond just the list,
coral, with the coral and the the
archnemesis of summer night. I mean, that just rolls off your tongue.
Yeah. So wow, very
oil
powerful.
heavy starlight. Yeah.
Very
so
powerful.
for something that looks so simple, when I first picked it up, there's a lot.
No,
there's a lot to consider.
not
Right.
simple.
Right.
That'd be a good one. Yeah, maybe I'll use that in class.
Yeah, that would be a good one with students. Okay, so we're going to carry on with a poem entitled Enlightenment by Natasha Trethewey. And again, I apologize if I don't have the name right. We will get that right. So here we go. In the portrait of Jefferson that hangs at Monticello, he is rendered two-toned, his forehead white with illumination, a lit bulb, the rest of his face in shadow, darkened as if the artist meant to contrast his bright knowledge, its dark subtext. By 1805, when Jefferson sat for the portrait, he was already linked to an affair with his slave. Against a backdrop, blue and ethereal, a wash of paint that seems to hold him in relief, Jefferson gazes out across the centuries, his lips fixed, as if he's just uttered some final word. The first time I saw the painting, I listened as my father explained the contradictions. How Jefferson hated slavery, though, out of necessity, my father said, had to own slaves. That his moral philosophy meant he could not have fathered those children. Would have been impossible, my father said. For years we debated the distance between word and deed. I'd follow my father from book to book, gathering citations, listening as he named, like a field guide to Virginia, each flower and tree and bird, as if to prove a man's pursuit of knowledge is greater than his shortcomings, the limits of his vision. I did not know then the subtext of our story, that my father could imagine Jefferson's words made flesh in my flesh, the improvement of the blacks in body and mind in the first instance of their mixture with the whites, or that my father could believe he'd made me better. When I think of this now, I see how the past holds us captive, its beautiful ruin etched on the mind's eye. My young father, a rough outline of the old man he's become, needing to show me the better measure of his heart, an equation writ large at Monticello. That was years ago. Now we take in how much has changed. Talk of Sally Hemings, someone's asking, how white was she? Parsing the fractions as if to name what made her worthy of Jefferson's attentions. A near white, quadroon mistress, not a plain black slave. Imagine stepping back into the past, our guide tells us then, and I can't resist whispering to my father, this is where we split up. I'll head around to the back. When he laughs, I know he's grateful I've made a joke of it, this history that links us. White father, black daughter, even as it renders us other to each other. Okay, John, why don't you go first on this one?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, heartbreaking. Again, the ending there, the idea, and you don't realize the frame story, if you will, of the poem until you're about halfway through.
Yeah, that they are actually at Monticello looking at these things.
Right, well, and that there's a white father and a black daughter.
Until the very, very end. And
that she clearly feels that there's been a separation, right? Or there's been something is separating them or alienating them from each other. Mm-hmm. And her trying to understand her father's racist, it seems, right?
Yeah.
I kind of got distracted because there were people screaming out in the room, and I was trying
they couldn't wait to hear what happens in this episode, and they were trying to bust through the door. But that's what struck me too. I'm sorry to jump in, just the idea of a white father having a black daughter, and yet still these subtle, and actually we've been talking about microaggressions a lot here recently where we work, and just these subtle little microaggressions against his daughter that somehow Sally Hemings was white enough for Jefferson, and somehow the white part of his daughter has made her better, and all those kind of subtle nefarious things that I talk with my students about this, and we talked about the idea that racism is subtle. It's you can see the guys in Charlottesville marching around, but everyday racism is not necessarily does not look like that.
Right.
Luckily, not anymore. As much as possible, I guess. I mean, I don't want to make sweeping statements, but the other thing that I found fascinating about this is at the very end, she said, "This is where we split up. I'll head around to the back."
Right.
And the second time I read that, I realized, she's going around to the slave entrance, and he gets to go through the front entrance. So they've actually fulfilled.
Right.
He's Jefferson, she's Sally Hemings in a way.
Right. I wonder about the backstory of the mother. Like, what was the relationship?
Yeah, she's not mentioned at all.
She's not mentioned, and she must have been black, right? I mean, if there's a white father, and yeah,
unless maybe she was adopted, but otherwise, yeah, you would assume there was a black mother involved. Yeah. And just that, like you said, that last line, it renders us other to each other.
Yeah.
And it seems like the dad doesn't realize what's going on, but yet it says he's grateful I've made a joke of it. So maybe it's like something that he would never want to talk about or he refuses to address.
Well, and what's interesting to me is that the white father must not think he's racist to have married a black woman, but then still apparently has these other ideas that have been still floating around.
Right.
So that's, such a sad situation.
It's almost like an unconscious, that he's spewing these things out here. So, yeah, I thought these two stood out, and not necessarily the happiest poems, but I think they're powerful nonetheless, and they give us a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, not every poem is happy, right? We would never argue that.
Yes.
And it is good to have to look from other people's perspectives and think about the world, right? Yeah. How are others experiencing it? So
yeah, and it is reality, and sometimes reality is painful to look at, but we have to.
Right. All right, thanks for watching. Join us at trojanpoetrydgn.blogspot.com and follow us on Twitter at trojanpoetrydgn.